You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Inside the Screenwriter's Mind, episode number 9. First, think. Second, dream. Third, believe. And finally, dare. Walt Disney.
Have you ever wondered what it's like inside a screenwriter's mind? In this podcast, we explore how successful screenwriters tackle structure, plot, character, dialogue, and the film business. Get ready to go down the rabbit hole of story. Let's travel inside the screenwriter's mind with your guide, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of Inside the Screenwriter's Mind. I am your guide, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is brought to you by Bulletproof Script Coverage. Now, unlike other script coverage services, Bulletproof Script Coverage actually focuses on the kind of project you are and the goals of the project you are. So we actually break it down by 3 categories: micro budget, indie film market, and studio film. There's no reason to get coverage from a reader that's used to reading tentpole movies when your movie's going to be done for $100,000. And we wanted to focus on that at Bulletproof Script Coverage. Our readers have worked with Marvel Studios, CAA, WME, NBC, HBO, Disney, Scott Free, Warner Brothers, The Blacklist, and many, many more. So if you need your screenplay or TV script covered by professional readers, head on over to covermyscreenplay.com. And guys, I have a special treat for you. If you are interested in getting a 3-part video series on screenwriting and how to write blockbusters in Hollywood today by some Oscar winners, some multi-billion-dollar screenwriters, all you got to do is head over to bulletproofscreenwriting.tv/free video series. Now, today we go inside the mind of Rob Edwards. Rob Edwards is the writer behind Disney's Princess and the Frog, Treasure Planet, and also was a writer on In Living Color and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and also consulted on Tangled, Wreck-It Ralph, and Frozen. This episode was originally aired on the Indie Film Academy podcast, and it is hilarious and really, really informative. So prepare to go inside the mind of Rob Edwards.
Would you mind just kind of going through, and so people have just an idea of your background and where you're coming from? Can you give a little bit of a background in your career as a screenwriter?
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm originally from Detroit. From there went to Syracuse. Had a great time there. Among my classmates was Aaron Sorkin and Aaron Sorkin on the theater side, and then Jay McInerney actually on the literary side. So Jay was the grad student du jour, and I was the undergrad du jour. So very fun. And studying with Tobias Wolff, who's an amazing professor, now is at Stanford. Let's see. From there, my dad was a doctor, and he said I had. It basically said you got 9 months to make a career, to actually support yourself in Hollywood, or else you're coming back home. You're going to go to med school, And he's a gastroenterologist, so it was going to be guts, for my entire life. And yeah, so faced with that prospect, I said, okay, well let me see what I can do here. I in college actually started writing letters, kind of fan letters to writers. Just anything that I would see that I thought was well written, I'd pen off a letter, and I got a lot of responses from a couple of people, and I basically asked them, if you were a teenager in college right now, what would you recommend that you do? What would you, if you could get in a time machine, go backwards, what would you do? What would you do? And I got great advice. And a lot of it was, read everything you can, expose yourself to as much stuff as you can, think critically about the movies you see, write as much as you can. Get all your bad writing done during college. You're gonna do a lot of bad writing. So get it all. What is it in Bird by Bird? They say they talk about crappy first draft, and that everybody does them. Everybody has that. Those bad waffles. As it were. The ones you have to just throw away. So get those done in college, and then third piece of advice was come out to Hollywood as soon as you can. So, it came out between my junior and senior years to work on just to write and joke writing, stuff like that, just basic writing, finding comics, $10 a joke, writing their stand-up routines,
right,
and stuff. So that was a ball. Wound up working on a movie as a clapper loader, a movie called Tiger Town for Disney. And that was fun because they got a real sense of the practicality. It's just how do movies come together. And I was working with this guy, Bob Ellswood, who's now fantastic DP, award-winning director of photography. But at the time, he was just doing this Disney movie and, taught me a lot of his lighting techniques. I worked up from, just distributing water and sodas on the set to being a clapper loader. So,
can you explain what a clapper loader is?
Yes. Clapper loader is the guy who holds the clapper, what's the official term for that thing? I should know. The slate. Yeah.
Right.
Your job is basically to, that the sound guy and the director of photography are on different kind of schedules. The sound guy has a certain amount of reels, a certain way of marking, what take is what. And so I would race over to him and he would give me his number, reel 245, take 7, and then some code. I would write that on the slate, and then I'd run over to the DP, the director of photography, and he would say, okay, we're on, this is mag 17, mag 17, take, and he might have a different take number because he's also been shooting, just stuff around the set. So I'd write down what that was, and then I would get more information from the script coordinator. I'd throw all that on the slate, and then I'd run over to the set, and then call the slate, the scene and take number, and then clap it and sync up the film, the film and the sound. So it was actually really fun because between takes, between setups, they would need help setting up the lights, and they would need, the sound guy would be coordinating with that. And as a student filmmaker, it was just fantastic because I got a sense of just how little you really needed to light a set beautifully.
Right.
This guy would sometimes just use ambient light and a fill. A huge box with a kind of a translucent piece of paper. So a big styrofoam box with a translucent piece of paper. He put a light on it, and sometimes that would be the only light that he would have, and that would just be to fill in the shadows. And then he would use the regular light from the windows, sometimes with a filter over that light, so that and the light that he had would balance out, and then he'd be done. And it gave the actors a lot of freedom to move around. It gave the sound guy a lot of freedom because there were no shadows were really going to come from it. So I went back to Syracuse and just was like, okay, good. All my films looked beautiful, because I've just been watching. I've been learning from at the hands of the master all summer. It was great. Very fun.
Right.
And so with screenwriting, I said, with the 9-month clock, 9-month sword of Damocles swinging over my head, I said, I have 9 months to do this. I'm going to figure this out. And at the time, the Hollywood Reporter and Variety on Thursdays would list every production that was going on in town. And I said, okay, great. Nobody knows me. I'm a kid from Detroit. If I strike out with every production in town, it still doesn't matter. I'm just going to go back to Detroit, work for my dad or whatever. So if everybody says no problem. It's basically I am where I am now, which is I'm not doing anything. If one person says yes, great. I'm in the game, and I can call my dad, whatever, and
right.
and I'm fine. So I called every single production, everything that was open, and I said, my thing was, because I didn't want everybody hanging up on me, I said, hey, do you want to hear a joke or a piece of gossip? and that was my first thing, like, hello, so-and-so production. Like, hey, do you want to hear a joke or a piece of gossip? Like, who are you? Like, do you want to hear a joke or a piece of gossip? Yeah, joke, whatever, and I tell a joke. Or sometimes people would say a piece of gossip, and I tell them a piece of gossip, and they'd say, "Oh, that's nothing. Hey, you wouldn't believe what happened on the set today." And then they would tell me a better piece of gossip,
right?
And they were like, "Well, so who are you? What do you want?" I'm like, "Oh, don't worry about that. I'll call you tomorrow." And I would call the next day. Joke or piece of gossip. "Oh, okay. Hey, you're that guy. Yeah, I was just talking about you. What do you know? What's your deal, man?" I'm like, "Look, I'm looking for a job. I just want to get something, anything out there. So if you have a PA job, if your production assistant isn't doing just the perfect work, and you're just thinking, hey, I got a guy who has a joke a day and is the best gossip in town, I might be a better fit for you than the guy you have now." And I'm like, "Oh, that's a great take, dude," whatever. So, and I did that for, I think it only took me about 3 weeks. But remember, I'm making like 30 calls a day. I'm rotating through 60 productions every 2 days. So I call everybody every 2 days. And then at the end of about 2-3 weeks, I got 3 calls, and people said, "Hey, I got a job for you." And so I just took the best offer, which at the time was CBS Radford in Studio City. And I worked there. At days, I would kind of deliver office supplies. It was the worst job in the world. It was a job that the janitor, was like, "Oh my God, you have the worst job in the world," And so I would do that by day, and then I would write all night. I figured if I wrote a page or 2 every night, I'd be ahead of the game. Eventually, I had a really fun spec. I Xeroxed it. And as I was delivering supplies or sodas, I would deliver my spec and the sodas, and I would say, "Hey, here are the your Diet Coke, and here's my script. Both are equally refreshing." And people were like, "Oh, okay, kid, I'll check it out." Most of them wound up in the trash, but some of them got read. Mm-hmm. And eventually, like, people who were getting shows picked up were like, "Oh, hey, I think I'm going to hire the guy in the soda shed." And from that, they called me up and said, 2 guys, here's the story. 2 guys were out to lunch, and they both said that they were going to hire me. And so it's like, they both kind of quickly paid the check, called me at the shed and said, "Hey, kid, who's your agent? I want to make an offer." And I said, "Well, I don't have an agent." And he said, "Okay, you do now. I'm going to have my agent call you." And the other guy did the same thing. "Great, I'm going to give you a job. I want you to talk to my agent." And then all of a sudden, agents started calling me in the soda shed, saying, "Okay, who are you? Who are you, and why are you in play? You all of a sudden showed up on everybody's board as this guy out of nowhere. Could you meet with us before you make any decisions?" And so I'm 20 years old, and I had my choice between 10 agencies. And I went with the guys I liked the most. I started working right away, called my dad. It was like 4 months in, and 4 months.
No guts for me, then.
Yeah, exactly. No guts. Hey, sorry. You got to go after my little brother now, who is now in advertising. So funny. But but that was it. I beat the clock. And just had a great time. Didn't look back.
Okay. Well, what was the first kind of gigs? What was that like?
The first gig was actually, it was funny. I had this. There was a show called Better Days on CBS. Mm-hmm. And it's notable not for the show itself, because the show was canceled pretty quickly. The 13 order, which to me, as a 20-year-old kid, I thought, okay, great. An order for 13 episodes is better for me than an order for, say, 6 episodes, or an order for 3 episodes, which a lot of shows were. They were a pilot plus 2. And so Better Days was just this show. They made a great offer. They were going to jump me a couple of ranks. In TV, there's you start off as a staff writer, then you move up to story editor, and then you move up to I think it's executive story editor, and then co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, executive producer. And it's like almost a military, right? Where you just ascend through the ranks every year. You can negotiate for a better title and better, more money. And each position has more and more authority. And they told me, hey, you don't have to start as a staff writer. You can just start right off as a story editor, and we'll give you a ton of money. I was like, oh, awesome. That'd be great. So that was at first the offer on the table. Like, hey, come in, write an episode, and we'll look at you for as a staff writer. So I wrote my episode. They wound up hiring a team, 2 other people to do the job. Those 2 people turned in their draft at about the same time I turned in my draft. And everybody said, wow, this kid's draft is so much better than this veteran team of writers. Why didn't we hire the other guy? And so they quickly fired the team that they had hired and then hired me. And so, so I that was my first gig. And it was very fun, lasted for a little while. When it got canceled, it was kind of weird for me, heartbreaking, because we were working so hard on the episode that we were doing, and then all of a sudden they said, "Okay, guys, put your pencils down, go home." And it was like, oh no, just devastating. And so right after that, the best thing in the world happened, which was all these guys had come from the Gary Marshall School of Comedy. So Gary Marshall did The Odd Couple, and then Happy Days, and Mork and Mindy, and Laverne and Shirley, and all of these shows, and his disciples are still doing shows, and I found that having plugged into that energy, that group, that network, I was just working all the time. There was not a time when any of those guys were not working. In fact, most of the guys they took their boxes from that show, from Better Days, walked right over onto another show, and then called me from the other show, and I wound up working, right after that. So that. Now
I know you worked on Full House, then The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and then In Living Color. Can you talk a little bit about? Is there any great stories from that time, or is there some insights you can give into that kind of writing and writing for television?
Oh, yeah. Well, Full House, the funny thing was, I'll start with the bad and end with the good. Full House, the funny thing was, and I can just say this now, but none of the writers watched the show. It was terrible. It was a terrible thing. It was always a good show. It was always very entertaining, and we were working really hard on it. But when the time came, we would all trade stories about Married with Children, because that was on at the same time. And that was a show that all the writers in Hollywood really, really wanted to work on. And but the thing I did learn from Full House was that Jeff Franklin, who created it and ran it, had a rule, which was, sorry about that, that's my agent. Yeah, but Jeff Franklin, who was running the show, had a rule, which was you shouldn't write a joke that a person has to get. And I actually liked that a lot. That there were no references, there was nothing that you had to kind of know in order to get the joke. The joke was right there in front of you. And even in again, because I'd also worked with Aaron Sorkin, and Sorkin said essentially the same thing, which was, don't reveal stuff. Don't set up stuff in the first act that you're not going to pay off until say the third act. Set it up. Show people what they need to know when they need to know it, and then do it. It's just more dramatic. It's a much more dynamic way of storytelling. I love that. On Fresh Prince was interesting to me because nobody knew it was going to be a hit. Everybody was looking at it. In fact, Andy and Susan Borowitz, who created the show, they were more or less forced onto the show because everybody was looking at, there's Will Smith, he's a rapper, and rappers, they're violent, and whatever, he's going to try to kill everybody. and I said, Will Smith is a rapper, yeah, but he's a very, very very soft, very specific kind of rapper. He's not a gangster rapper. He's a very popular rapper. His stuff was about, driving his mom's new Porsche. And,
yeah, I mean, it's like, his roughest songs his parents don't understand. So,
Yeah, exactly. And everybody was like, no, he's a rapper. It's going to be terrible. So writers were kind of running away from it. Writers are notoriously shy and kind of wimpy. And so people were running away from it. And I saw it and I thought, oh man, this kid he's so charming. He's got great timing. He's he's a natural. Why don't man? This is going to be a blast. Of all the shows I saw that fall, that show just looked like it was a no-brainer. And fortunately for me too, I grew up in Detroit, but I also went to a school that was very much like Bel Air Prep in Michigan, a school called Cranbrook, which is where notorious now because Mitt and Ann Romney met while attending Cranbrook. It's that kind of school. So all of the jokes on Fresh Prince the first season about the school were right out of my experiences. Everything, the uniforms, the things that were written on the doors, all of that stuff. I was the main research source. And in fact, friends of mine who I went to high school with are like, "Oh my God, whatever, you were just ripping our school off left and right." So that was a blast. I got to work with Will and still friend with Will. Will is just an amazing guy and obviously has grown, way beyond anything that he did on television. And, but you could see it then. And the nicest guy in Hollywood, the absolute nicest guy in Hollywood. He will stop whatever he's doing to talk to you for a good 20 minutes just to find out, how you're doing and everything. Right. Amazing. And Living Color was fun because I think I might have been the first writer that Keenan Wayans hired on the show. And the big conversation was, okay, what are we going to do? What new ground are we going to seek out? And we quickly came to the thing like, there are no sacred cows. We're going to take everybody down. Arsenio, Mike Tyson, Reverend Farrakhan. We're hitting them all. There's nobody is safe here. And just hit the ground running and just really, really, really just go do the things that nobody else could do on any of the other shows. Saturday Night Live maybe has 2 black cast members at a time, usually one. And this was the opposite. We had 2 white cast members. Right.
Jim Carrey.
Now, the thing that's interesting, and the thing that's interesting from a filmmaking standpoint with both of these is that with on Fresh Prince, when the first numbers came in, they were okay, but not great. And they had expected the numbers to be much higher. They expected us to have Cosby numbers. And that was never going to be the case because we were a much younger show, a much more, we were just a different kind of show. We weren't the traditional show. This was hip hop. This was kind of a new thing going on, and the audience wasn't readily available on TV. So the numbers came in, and I just remember standing on the set with everybody looking through Variety magazine at the numbers and just saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I think we're all going to go home." And this was before the show had even reached its 3rd episode. 2nd episode, same thing. Didn't do well. 3rd episode did really well, and then everybody started buying cars. But those 2 weeks before the numbers broke were really painful. We thought we were doing a really good show. We were making ourselves laugh, and the network was just they were starting to not answer our calls and to look at other things to put in our place. You look back on it now, it's like, oh, it's a TV classic. But at the time, we all thought, wow, we had done it all right. We were making ourselves laugh. We were making our own favorite show. Andrew Stanton at Pixar, he always says, be a film goer first, be a filmmaker second. And that's what we were doing, not working. It didn't seem to be working. But it just took a little time for people to talk about it and to find it. And the same is true of in Living Color. It started off as an hour-long series, and they cut it to an hour-long to a half-hour series, and then hour special and then a half-hour special. And every time they saw another run-through, they just cut it down again and again and again. And Keenan, to his credit, said, well, let's just shoot the material we have, which was about an hour and a half, and cut it down to a half-hour special. But the executives were saying, we don't have anything. This is it. We're just going to it's not funny. And they were like, Rob, why do you think this is funny? I said, because it is really funny, And fortunately, their assistant was black, and she was saying, I don't see why you guys don't think this is funny. And the audience loads in. The audience laughs so hard. They were like stomping their feet, kind of laughing, like jumping out of their seats and stuff, and like high-fiving kind of thing, like just really uproarious, almost like church, like, going nuts because it was so cathartic. And the executives turned to me and say, you paid him to do that, didn't you? I said, no, the show is actually funny. Just put it on the air. But you're always sitting there kind of sweating it out before the thing actually comes on.
Is that fairly common to be at odds with the executives and people who kind of don't get the humor?
It is universal. It is every. I've rarely had the other thing, which is where the executives are like, "Hey, we trust you. It's going to be funny. I love it." They're always a little bit worried, and even Ed Catmull at Epixar, he says. With animation especially, it's terrible before it's wonderful. And with comedy, the same thing. Sometimes you're kind of poking around and you kind of find it. And the good executives, there are some producers that are really, truly wonderful that'll say, look, you're going to find it. You're funny. You've been funny before. You're going to be funny today. You're not going to sit there. You're not going to tank. So, what do you need? Do you need time or, do you need other resources? Whatever you need to do it, just go. Do your magic. Get in the room and go. And other people will just sit there and they'll completely clog your process with nervousness. And and they're saying, this is just not going to work. It's like, whatever it is, it's terrible. And and you're just always getting calls like, oh, shut it down. And then, you're always sitting there at a award ceremony with the same guys taking selfies saying, oh, hey, I always knew it. So that's always the thing with a writer or anybody creative, right? Is that you're the one person that knows, you're the one person that believes, that can see it all in your head. And it's just a matter of convincing the horses that you've hired to have faith in you and to let you keep going so that you can pull it off. But it's absolutely. I think maybe once or twice in 30 years, I've seen an executive who says, "Oh yeah, this is going to be fun."
All right. Yeah. Have you ever done stand up or do you just focus completely on? I mean, I know you do a lot of comedy, so I was just curious.
Oh yeah, for me, when I was, especially in college, one of the pieces of advice that I got was, somebody said, "Hey kid, are you party funny or are you actually funny?" And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, your friends think you're funny, right? And I was like, yeah. Well, okay, good. That's a basic thing because sometimes, there are people who think they're funny and they don't know anybody who will laugh at the things they say. So you're in a good place. But can you go into a room full of strangers and tell a joke, or seven, and have them laugh at you? And I said, well, I really don't know. Well, you should probably find that out before you try to make a living, doing this.
Right.
Like that it's actually in the writing process, especially in comedy, jokes are like words. You are always, you need to come up with jokes on the spot. And a lot of the times jokes to replace the jokes that don't work. On Fresh Prince, I was famous for that, where between takes, I would run onto the set and say, okay, I know that, the jokes that didn't work in the previous take, here's why they didn't work. And here are better jokes. And to be able to give Will and, Alfonso Ribeiro, who played Carlton, give them better jokes, in a second. that becomes a skill that you really, really need to develop. And the way you develop is through stand-up, because there's nothing more terrifying. I can't, I would think that jumping out of a plane or bungee jumping or something like that would be just a walk in the park compared to the feeling you get as you're walking onto the stage at the comedy shop, at any comedy venue, comedy store or the Improv or anything like that. There's that moment of terror, and you open your mouth, you introduce yourself, and you get that for free. You get your first joke for free, and then the next 3 jokes decide, who you are. Are you going to? Are you actually funny? Do they think? Specifically, do you have a point of view that can get a laugh? That can get laughs consistently. You see people like Amy Schumer or Chris Rock, who have great points of view. As soon as they start talking, you know exactly where they're going to come from, and you just lean in and you smile, just waiting to laugh because, I get that, this is great, this is going to be fantastic. The setup is just so wonderful, and off they go.
Right.
And yeah, so for me, I was a semi-shy kid. I mean, nobody ever believes that I'm shy, whatever. But when I was a kid, I was pretty shy. And then, and just the idea of doing jokes, no music, no nothing. I'm not sitting behind an instrument or whatever. I'm just getting up and telling jokes. That's terrifying. So, I did that all through college, and just had a blast with it. First time up was nerve-wracking, and then after that, it was a ton of fun. And for me, I took a very writer approach. I would grab a newspaper and, just see what were the best topics that I could joke on. And so I always had new jokes. Every set I would do, I didn't do any 2 sets the same. So if I did 3 sets in a week, I would do 3 different sets. Usually the same introduction and the same ending, but the middle of it was, hey, let's talk politics, or let's talk,
Now, would you have everything ready before you came on stage, or are you talking about you would actually read the newspaper while you were doing, was it kind of improvised?
That? There's that Mort Saul kind of thing, where he would do that. He would just read the newspaper and speak contemporary. It was amazing. I saw him once and I thought, okay, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But I had started, in college, remember, I started as a joke writer. So my $10 a joke thing, I still do that. I'll walk into a meeting and I'll have jokes actually written before I walk into a meeting, just because I don't want to fall on my face. So I would have some that were written out, a good. If I was gonna play around, I'd have 5 jokes, warm people up to a topic, and then I would play. Once I got comfortable with it, I would play around and I would give myself a good, 3 minutes of just goofing off. 3 minutes in a 10-minute set of just, let me just goof off. Let me, Halloween's coming up, so what jokes do I have? Or, Valentine's Day, that was always fun. And, and sometimes the audience will give you stuff. You'll say, "Oh, what's your least favorite thing about Thanksgiving?" And everybody will start talking. "Oh, yeah, right." Boom, 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 boom. And you can just jump in and let your mind go and kind of, improv with the audience. And it's really fun because the audience is, the audience relaxes to you. They really start to get you. And for me, the main thing I was trying to do is just tune into what is funny about me. Where can I pull jokes from that will be consistently funny? And my point of view on stuff. And that became the Fresh Prince point of view. It was very much the Princess and the Frog point of view. When I was working with Aaron Sorkin on Studio 60, that was, I was writing the sketches on that show, and that's where I was pulling, my point of view from. I've written magazine articles, same kind of thing. My voice is pretty much what I developed while I was doing stand-up. And I recommend that for anybody. Everybody who considers themselves funny and who wants to write comedy, Don't, do all your suffering, where it doesn't cost anything. You just get up and you do it. And in 5 minutes, you tape your performance. You absolutely know what's funny and what's not, as opposed to spending 3 months writing a screenplay and getting things circled or whatever. It just takes too long. You can go up 3 times a week, and in that time, you can find out everything you need to know.
Mm-hmm. Now, I really want to talk about Treasure Planet,
sure,
because I have a 7-year-old son.
Oh, great, great.
And the funny thing was, for whatever reason, I never read Treasure Island as a kid. It was probably kind of this big thing that I missed out on, but I had never seen it. So my first real connection with Treasure Island was watching Treasure Planet.
Oh, cool.
And I
That's
absolutely,
no,
I absolutely love that movie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, see, me too.
I probably like it more than my son does. I mean, he loves it too, but I'm like, I just think it's so well made.
Oh, thanks. Thanks very much. Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting for your son too, that as he goes back and watches it again, what I find is that, because now the movie is about 15 years old, and now
2002.
Yeah, right, exactly. So people are kind of rediscovering it as they're older, and they're understanding. They get it first as a kid, 7 or 8 years old, and then they'll start getting it as a teenager, and they'll say, "Oh, okay, I see now. Wow, this is so much deeper than I thought." I just got a text from my son about 2 days ago. He's at Loyola University in Baltimore, and he said, "Hey, they're playing Treasure Planet in the break room, and the room is full, and I'm really proud of you right now." And so it's playing in the break room in college, and that was like, okay, great. That's why I wrote the movie. So my son could walk by and say, "Hey, my dad wrote that," and but all the time you're trying to write your own favorite movie, and it was Ron Clements and John Musker directed the movie, and their thing was, we want to bring this wonderful book, this great Robert Louis Stevenson book, to a modern audience, and have them experience the wonder and the emotional depth of that movie, just like you did. And kind of have a respect for the book. Maybe some people would go back and read the book. Others would just kind of just see the story for what it was, this very, wonderful kind of almost father and son story, and get the adventure of, outer space that would replace the kind of adventure that was had generations ago about pirates in the sea. Nobody thinks, oh, I'm going to have excitement, I'm going to get on a boat. People don't think that anymore. So you have to kind of heighten it and say, laser guns and cannons and all that stuff, and then just really have fun with the creatures and everything. It was so much fun to write, and for me, it was my first Disney movie. Since then I've worked on a ton of stuff, but yeah, it's just whatever you think, as a writer, think about it. Whatever you think, you can write it down, and then you would see drawings of whatever you had thought. The most amazing Disney artists would draw this stuff. So you'd have here's a creature with 8 eyes, and I would say, hey, I wonder what kind of binoculars a creature with 8 eyes would have, and I would kind of draw my little terrible, I had a comic strip in high school, so I would draw my little terrible thing, and I'd see it back a couple hours later, and it would be fully rendered with, this amazing artwork, and so much better and funnier than anything I thought. It was just a fantastic experience. Yeah.
How's that collaboration when you're working with other writers and you're, are you guys do you all go off and work on things on your own and then come back, or is it just like a room where you're kind of giving ideas? Because, I know you've probably worked a lot in collaboration. And for me, I've never worked in collaboration, so I don't know how that really works.
Oh, it's amazing. I think everybody should try it. It is not easy. when I started writing, the same thing. I would always write by myself, and specifically, I'd write in the middle of the night, and in the mornings when nobody was even awake. And I like that feel. I like kind of relaxing and seeing the environment that I'm writing. The characters come to life in front of me, and I can see the walls and the props and everything, and I'm just kind of writing as fast as I can to keep up with them. And in a collaborative environment like television or movies, and now like pretty much all movies, you're there and you just have to let go. You just have to say, okay, well, I have 20 ideas for, good versions of this movie. And the guy across from me who's writing the check, who's paying my bill, he has maybe 15, maybe 10. And my job is to find the 4 or 5 in the middle that work for both of us. There's this, you figure like that my 20, there's a circle, and then his 15, there's a circle. The 2 circles are going to converge at some point. And there are going to be these ideas in the middle that will work for everybody. So my job is to not fight for the 15 that are going to just go down in flames, that I'm never going to sell to that guy. And his job, hopefully, is to give up on, the 5 that he's going to have to sacrifice. And then we'll work super hard on the 5 that are in the middle. And we may go through all 5 of those until we find the best one, but there will be a best one that everybody can work on. And that everybody will bring something to. So on Princess and the Frog, you go up to Pixar, and the best guys in the world are giving you notes. John Lasseter and Andrew Stanton, who directed WALL-E and Finding Nemo, and you've also got Pete Docter, who did
Monsters Inc. Right?
Monsters Inc. And yeah, exactly, and the new one. And all of these, Brad Bird, all these guys are giving you notes, and the way they give you notes is they say, and so it's like from on high, right? The tablets come down. This is what Brad Bird has to say about your movie. But what they're doing is they're saying, if it was my movie and I was personalizing it, this is what I would do, and they walk you through it.
Right. And
your job is to say, okay, here's how I am like Brad Bird, and here's how I am not like Brad Bird, And so I'm completely in tune with Brad Bird up until he said this, but I see what he is offering, and I can do something with that. If I try to work on the other idea, it's going to seem inorganic. It's going to seem just like I'm trying to imitate Brad Bird. So at that point, I go into my little cave, and I write something, and I show it to everybody, and I say, well, this is what I came out of the meeting with. This is what I think Brad is talking about. This is the execution of that idea. And this is what I think Andrew was talking about. He was talking about character and the huge arc of it. Here are my 5 points on how I think those changes will lay out. And, when Pete Docter started talking about this, at first I didn't really get it. And then I started thinking about the movies that he was talking about, and I watched them all. And I came up with these things when I went to my cave. And that's kind of the fun of it, because everybody else will do the same thing. The directors will say, we get this, we get that. We're going to use these things. We're going to try to, none of us believe in this idea, but there was some excitement around it when it was pitched. So let's just keep it alive for a little while longer. Maybe we can attach something to it that'll make it work. Maybe we can't, and we'll just throw it out, but let's keep it alive for a little while. And a lot of times that's the game you're playing. You're trying to have the movie resonate with as many people as humanly possible. You want more people to buy tickets. You want to be able to do it again. At the same time, the only way that it's truly going to resonate, it's truly going to be great, is if it comes from your own personal heart, your own personal experience. Mm-hmm. And that it has to kind of walk the line between being an independent film and a huge, popular film. That if it's cloying, if it's just like, oh, look, we're just going to say everything that everybody agrees with, that's not going to work at all. And if it's too obscure that nobody's going to get it, you're gonna die there too. So a film like Inside Out, it is very, very unconventional, but and the way that it's telling stories, it's entirely theoretical. But the emotional, what's happening emotional in that movie. If you went and talked to Pete Docter, I'm sure he would tell you, yes, exactly, that's how I feel. When I see Treasure Planet, I cry at the last part. When they're saying goodbye, I always cry. When I watch Princess and the Frog, I've now seen it like way too many times. I've seen it like 20 times, and there was a point where I kind of have to leave because I just burst into tears. And I knew that would happen when I was writing it, because that's why I was writing it. I was writing it for myself and for my best friends, and hoping that, if I write this, if I do this correctly, there won't be a dry eye in the house. And I remember the first screening we had of that. And there was the moment came up, and it could have just been people going, "Oh, come on," whatever, throwing popcorn at the screen. But instead, the room got very, very quiet. And then all of a sudden, I just started hearing sniffling. And then I started hearing like people, like tissues, whatever. The sound of a lot of tissues kind of just coming out. And I
can just imagine that. You're like,
okay. It's just like people sniffling, and like one screen I went to, like someone was like open mouth crying, and I was,
you're like, yeah,
exactly. And I was joking around with a friend of mine who's like, the guy's 75 years old. Took him to it, and a screening at the El Capitan, and I was joking around like, "Oh yeah, that's for kids, and don't worry about it." And I turned to him, and he was just crying his eyes out. This is beautiful. And I said, "Okay, that's it. That's exactly what you want to do, right? Your job is to touch hearts, is to have it be cathartic and wonderful and magical, and that's when you're in the zone as a storyteller. People are laughing. Great, you've connected to them, and then you cry. You've touched their hearts in some way. You've changed the way they think about something. You've reintroduced them to magic. And in the case of Treasure Planet, you've made them believe in this relationship of characters that are drawn by hand. Where somebody sat down with a pencil and drew this guy a million times, and that is moving you to tears is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
No, I mean, it really was something that stood out in Treasure Planet, that relationship, and the fact that, the Long John Silver character wasn't, he wasn't just this, I mean, he had dimension to him, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
And he was like, actually, and I, to this day, I still haven't read the book, so I don't know how much is in the book. I always say, yeah, I know Treasure Island, but I'm actually referring to Treasure Planet most of the time. It's like, yeah, remember that time with the spaceship? And they're like, that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right, exactly. Like, hey, excuse me.
You know how it starts, and he's like riding on the sail, and he's like in the sky, and the robots. You remember the robots? And they're like, no,
yeah, right.
That's not in Treasure Island. Sorry.
Awesome.
But that was relationship.
Yeah, and that was the big debate on that movie, was that the effects tend to, I think with Ron Thomas' favorite movie was Star Wars, and I share that with him, and we're both Trekkers, so that was fun too. So we had this dialogue back and forth, and there is a tendency in movies like this, and even other movies, in the all of the comic book movies that are going on now, a lot of the science fiction movies that happen, a lot of times people get taken away with what they can do, with the machinery that they can do, and how fast the spaceships go, and what kind of weaponry you do, and that's always a big part of it. But for me, I said this movie, the best scenes of this movie will be the old man and the kid just talking. And everybody said, "Oh, you're messing with me, man," whatever. I'm like, no, it's never going to be it. It's going to be this scene and this fight scene and whatever. We got this thing choreographed to within an inch of his life. And I said, I think, look, I'm the writer talking. I know that, but I think it's going to be this guy and these two people, just talking and the conversations. And I'll tell you what the conversations are. You know, it's it's them sharing their dreams. It's the guy, basically, like, there's one of my favorite scenes in it, is when Jim thinks he didn't tie the ropes correctly and Scroop has kind of set him up. And, right. And you know, Silver knows what's going on, and he sees that he's just broken this kid. And he says, and this was like weeks and weeks, I think it was months and months and months, you know, the guys and Roy Connolly, who was a producer, and I just talking. We were saying, like, okay, these are two tough guys. These are two guys who come from the same side of the street. How would a guy tell another guy like that he loves him and he's, you know, that he's there for him? And it was like, you know, oh, you're going to rattle the stars, you know, whatever, you know, and I won't want to be there for you, just watching, you know, whatever. And that was it. Like, look, I'm going to be around, you know, you're going to be great. I'm going to be there when you're great. And, you know, I want to be on the journey. This is just a minor setback. So don't, you know, don't let it, whatever. And the way that happened was everybody talked about what it was. What did their father say to them? That was the most important thing in the world their father had ever said. And right. And it's your father saying, that was awesome. I think you're going to be really great at whatever it is, you know, someday. You know, your father saying, you know, bravo, or clapping.
It wasn't your fault, you know. Why, half the crew would be spinning in that black abyss if not for...
Don't you get it? I screwed up. I mean, for 2 seconds, I thought that maybe I could do something right, but... I just... Just forget it. Forget it.
No, you listen to me, James Hawkins. You got the makings of greatness in you, but you gotta take the helm and chart your own course. Stick to it, no matter the squalls. And when the time comes, you get the chance to really test the cut of your sails and show what you're made of. Well, I hope I'm there, catching some of the light coming off you that day.
You know, showing up at a baseball game, whatever, and you happen to hit, you know, whatever, and just that attaboy, that little, you know, pat on the head, you know, that's what we live for. And so, you know, no matter how much, you know, what the gravity of the special effects are around it, no, that's the scene. That's you know, that's it. Yeah. And then when they say goodbye, it was like, oh, geez, you know, thinking about it, you know, but that's the thing. People would pass by my office and I'd just be bawling. And they're like, are you okay, man? I'm like, no, I'm great. You know?
I'm a great writer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm brilliant. But like, I'm seeing this movie. I'm seeing the movie that you're going to see in a couple of years, right now. And I think it's great. I think if we don't blow it along the way, it's going to be great. And that's, you know, going back to even collaboration and everything. Everybody shares that little dream of, you know, if we can execute this right, if we can plus this thing, you know, Rob has given us the raw material. He's given us the book, and you know, these wonderful these lines and the staging, and I think this can work. And if we draw it right, if the performances are right, if we record the voices right, if the music is right, if we edit it right, if we lay it out correctly so that we're not in the way of it, if the scoring, the music works out, then there won't be a dry eye in the house. And all of that is the joy of collaboration, because everybody is making it better than the words on the page. You know, everything is enhancing that, and you know, it's just great teamwork.
Now, can you talk a little bit about your creative? I mean, I hate to say the creative process, but how, you know, over the years, I'm sure that you've learned kind of how your brain works and how you get into that groove and how you actually create stuff. I mean, it sounds to me like, you know, I write as well. And I think I can understand like kind of where your mindset is, in that part of you is writing and kind of improvising in a way, and you're kind of watching the movie in your head and writing it down. And part of you is also reacting to that. And you're kind of like writing something and you're feeling how, you know what I mean? It's kind of that dichotomy of doing two things at the same time.
Exactly. Well, and I try to. I'm notorious for trying to not do the two things at one time. In fact, the place where I get in trouble with most people is that people say, "What software do you use during the creative process?" I just got asked that question. I was in Marseille, France, and at a tech conference, at a web fest, and it was 3 days ago, and the guy asked me, what software do you use? And I said, I don't use any software. I just when I'm composing, when I'm in the creative flow, the tools get in the way. So I have a pad and a pen, and I have a pad and pen, and I'm just writing down everything that I think will be cool in the movie. Just cool scene after cool scene after cool scene. I'm not stopping myself. I'm overwriting. I'm just having fun. When I there's a little piece of the scene I can't think of, I just say brilliant thing happens here, and then I move on to the section that I know, and then I just keep going. I just stay in a flow, and I'm just getting the ideas down, and then I sit down, and I've gotten into this terrible habit because it looks terrible, which is I sit down with Post-it notes, and I put the ideas on Post-it notes, and then I put them on my door. Mm-hmm. And my door is basically the storyboard for the whole movie. So where the knob is the midpoint of the movie. The floor is the end of the third act, and the top of the thing is the setup, the first scene, and whatever midway through that thing, there's going to be a break into the first act and the second act and all that stuff. It's all kind of okay, great. That's the door. That's the flow of the movie. Now I sit down with the ideas that I've had and the cool scenes, and I say, okay, where should that be in the movie? And that's an extremely technical part of it, because I'm saying, okay, well, there's some things that I want to have in the setup portion, and that's going to be at the top of the door, and then some things I want to have in the payoff portion, so that's going to be towards the bottom, and the more spectacular scenes I'm going to put all towards the bottom of the door, and for every card that I'll have at the bottom of the door, I want to make sure it's set up. So I'll make another Post-it, and I'll put that up on top. And the first time through, I'm just throwing stuff up on the door. And then I sit down with it and I say, okay, great. I'm watching the movie now. Now I'm a third person, and I want to set it up. So, okay, here's this character. Here's what this character is great at. Here are this character's character flaws. Okay, good. Now I'll set this guy up. Okay, good. Now I want to incite, I want to have an inciting incident. So what is the best way to kind of rattle the cage of this guy? How can I take away his power base? How can I, in The Incredibles, right? Bob Parr is the world's greatest superhero, and then being a superhero is made illegal. Great, inciting incident. So it just yanks the thing out, Lightning McQueen in Cars. He's taken, he's not allowed to race. He's got a boot on his foot, So you yank that thing away. So how can I do that? That's great and dramatic and going to start the story. Boom. Okay. Well, that's at about eye level. I'm working with that. So I want to have that. I want to have him react to that. And then I want to have a decision made as to how I'm going to move forward. And that's going to be my break into act two. Then I'm going to have a ton of fun with it, around my chest area, at about my belt buckle. That's going to be my midpoint. I'm going to try to shift as many of the dynamics as I can, come out of that. And then I'm basically building to the end. I'm building to the climax. So I'm setting up the antagonist. I have the antagonist at the height of his powers. The antagonist is at that point going to take over the story and win. That's going to be my end of act two. And then, I'm going to just kind of try to write try to imagine the most dynamic, cathartic third act that I can. Right. But all the while through, I'm giving myself assignments. I'm saying, okay, what's the best way to set up this character? Now I'm just going to go and write. I'm just going to free write and write a bunch of fun stuff. And, some of it may survive, some of it may not. I'm just going to stick it in a pile. But really all the time, I'm just looking at structure. How can I make this movie flow? Because the worst thing you can do is go with a good idea too long. It's like we've all been in those movies where like, oh, I was laughing, and then, oh no, this just fell apart entirely. You know, I mean, I don't want to rag on it, but like Superman, the new Superman, right? There's that.
Right.
It's just zooming along. The guy's on a ship. He's run away from the thing. It's like, oh, awesome. His mom, his relationship with it. He puts his fist in the dirt and he goes flying. And I'm like, oh, this is great. This is the best movie ever. And then about 10 minutes later, I'm like, wait, what happened? All the momentum is gone. They've overused the idea of just setting him up. Like, you know, it's an hour-long first act, and I was excited beyond belief, and now I'm bored stiff. And what happened? And that's just craftsmanship. That's just, are you making a good cabinet? You know, can you, do the doors swing open the right way? Are they balanced? Is it, you know, are there enough shelves, or have you thought about it wrong? All of that stuff is in the planning. And then the art is, you know, yeah, let yourself be an artist. But that's the thing that I think a lot of people just plain old forget, is the raw mathematics of storytelling.
Right.
You know,
is there a specific movie that you think of in terms of, like, where do you go to mentally when you're coming up with structure for you know, everything?
Oh, it's a great question. My thing is different things for different projects. That I there's something I call a structural cousin, you know. So whenever I start on into a movie, I'm looking for what movies do I like that are like this? So you know, with Treasure Planet, I went to what was it? Geez. Actually, this is terrible. Of all the Treasure Island movies, I actually liked Muppet Treasure Island a lot because it was just so smooth, and it was like, oh, perfect. You know, it just told the story. It was great. And
did you ever see the Fraser Heston one, which was the one with Charlton Heston?
Yes, exactly. I saw them all. I saw them all
because I did an interview with him too, and I kept talking to him about Treasure Planet during the interview.
Oh, funny! Oh, funny! Oh, great! That was okay. Good. So listen to it. So, but because for me, I just wanted to see, okay, how has this story been told, and who has told it well? Because it's you know, it's a big book. It's got books are gangly, and you know, I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so I was looking at all of those, and then in there's a movie called Captain Courageous. I don't know if you know that one. And it's just a brilliant movie. It's very similar in storytelling to this one, and it was, you know, just that was when I said, okay, it's just about these two characters. It is all about these two characters and the emotional depth between them, because you know, you're crying all the way through that movie, and it's, you know, the old Spencer Tracy's the old sea guy, and then this kid who's just wonderful, you know, trying to be tough, and he becomes a man during it, and just great. So there were key scenes from that I said, okay, I'm going to steal as much as humanly possible from that movie, and then kick the dirt over the tracks. You know, I'm going to make it my own, but I'm going to start from where they ended and build off of that, so that I'm starting with great, and I can't help but wind up with even greater by the time I'm done, because I've now personalized it, and I've kind of made it into this. I've absorbed what's great about that, and you know, whatever years they took to write it, and then boom, I've done that. With Princess and the Frog, I looked at a lot of the princess movies, and I said, boy, there is no way in the world. Like, I coach soccer, you know, and the girls on the girls soccer teams are amazing. You know, even the 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and whatever, and I'm sure with your son, you see these girls who are fully capable of playing on the boys' teams, and they're just a different breed of human being than Disney had to deal with in the 50s. So the notion of a girl saying, oh, I'm in love with a prince, he's throwing a ball, I have to go there, you know, that's never going to resonate with anybody, any human being alive today. You know, the guy's going to have to earn it. And so we talked about all kinds of movies that we were going to that we wanted to screen. For me, it was Wedding Crashers, because I just really love that movie. And how can you just structurally, it was just a wonderful movie. And then the movie It Happened One Night. Again with Claudette, and what if you took the Claudette Colbert part and made that the guy, and took the took the the male part. I'll remember just saying, but you took that and then
Clark
switched
Gable?
them up. Clark Gable, thank you. If you took the Clark Gable part and switched it so that she is the one that's capable. She's the one that says, you've never fried an egg. You don't know what you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to hitchhike or anything like that. And made him be kind of lost at sea. Very he's a prince. He's never done anything before, and so that was our structural cousin for that one. And so anytime we were even remotely lost, we would screen the movie again and say, okay, what did they do during this part of the movie? Oh, great. This is the scene where they've got the curtain between them and they're sharing their dreams. That's a great idea. Why don't we do something like that? So that becomes the scene where Tiana's telling the prince for the first time about her restaurant. And in that scene, the best thing that happens was that they find out, like, he makes a sacrifice. He decides not to ask her out. He decides to go, race on ahead, right after that sequence. And so we did the same thing. They're on the paddle boat and they're looking out at the restaurant, and she starts sharing her dreams about the restaurant. He's fully ready at that point to ask her, to propose to her, and he chooses not to, and he goes off and does that. And it gave us this really fun dynamic in the story. Nobody, I think one French journalist during the press tour said, does this have anything to do with It Happened One Night? I was like, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, It Happened One Night and Royal Wedding, right? I said, yes, exactly.
Well, it's simple. It's all that old thumb, see? Yeah. Now, some people do it like this. Or like this. All wrong. Never get anywhere.
Oh, the poor thing.
Yeah, boy, but that old thumb never fails. It's all a matter of how you do it, though. Now, you take number one, for instance. That's a short, jerky movement like this. That shows independence. You don't care whether they stop or not. You got money in your pocket, see?
Clever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but number two, that's a little wider movement. Smile goes with this one like this. That means you got a brand new story about the farmer's daughter.
Mm-mm. You figured that out all by yourself, huh?
Nah, that's nothing. Yeah, number three, that's a pip. Yeah, that's a pitiful one. When you're broke and hungry and everything looks black. It's a long, sweeping movement like this. Got to follow through, though.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, but it's no good, though, if you haven't got a long face to go with it.
Here comes the car.
Okay, now watch me. I'm going to use number one. Keep your eye on that thumb, baby, and see what happens.
I still got my eye on the thumb.
Something must have gone wrong.
Oh.
Try number two.
When you get to 100, wake me up.
The classics are what the classics are. Those are great storytellers.
Yeah.
Telling fantastic stories. So why not, just watch the movie, internalize its level of storytelling, and then tell your own story from that. You're doing it anyway. You're just doing it unconsciously. So, realize what makes it great. Officer and Gentleman had a big part to play in Treasure Planet. There are a lot of scenes, not directly, not the dialogue or anything like that, but like, why is this scene so compelling? Why is it that when Mayo is just getting, terrorized by this guy, why do you love them both so much? And that led to, a sequence in Treasure Planet where he's making him, wash the dishes and all that stuff. And the thing that we got, the payoff of that sequence in Officer and a Gentleman, was that Zach Mayo does everything so great. He's just so, he's got no place to go, obviously, but he's just a great soldier. And because he wants to advance so much, he wants to just be a great, a great soldier.
Why would a slick little hustler like you want to sign up for this kind of abuse anyway?
I want to fly jets, sir.
My grandmama wants to fly jets.
I wanted it since I was a kid.
We're not talking about flying here. We're talking about character.
I've changed. I've changed since I've been here.
Hell, you have.
I've changed, sir.
You just polished up your act a little bit. You just shined it up. Now tell me what I want to hear. I want your DOR.
No, sir.
I want your DOR.
I ain't gonna quit.
Spell it. DOR.
I ain't gonna quit.
Yeah, then you can be free, and you and your daddy can get drunk and go hole chasing together, huh?
No, sir.
DOR.
I ain't gonna quit.
All right, then you can forget it. You're out.
Don't you do it. Don't you. I got nowhere else to go. I got nowhere else to go.
And so, so for us, we had, that here's Jim, and Jim is asleep, but he's asleep scouring a pot. And when Silver looks around, he sees like, oh my God, this kid has done every single dish in this thing, and everything is just spotless. It's all shimmering. It's time to reward him. And so he lets him pilot the boat for the first time. So that's, I don't know how long it would have taken me just organically to come up with something like that. I'm sure a year or two later, I may have stumbled upon that. But the idea of having a movie that's kind of a lodestar where you can, if you ever get lost, you just open up the map and look at it is a great thing. Right. With Aladdin and Thief of Baghdad, if you look at those two movies side by side, you'll be amazed. With Cars and Doc Holliday, if you look at those two, again, that most filmmakers will do it. Some don't admit to it, but there's nothing wrong with being a big fan of cinema and then building your cathedral on the shoulders of giants.
Do you ever, if you're writing a movie and another movie is kind of like you're saying, It Happened One Night or those movies, do you watch those movies and then have original ideas while you're watching that movie?
Oh yeah, all the time.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean that's one of the things that I wanted to see, because I always talk about I'm doing kind of more horror kind of movies, but hopefully horror movies that are well written, you know what I mean? And so what I'll do is I'll watch some of the movies that are kind of similar, and I'll get just amazing ideas that have nothing to do with the movie I'm watching, but it's just somehow being in that space, you know what I mean? It starts giving you ideas.
Yeah, no, I knew an artist at Disney, this guy Ken Harshaw, who's an amazing guy. He's currently doing video games, and he would watch movies while he was drawing, and sometimes it was like, well, why are you watching that movie? So, I don't know. It just puts me in a good mood, and I watch it. And sometimes it was just the staging or something about it would just wash over him and make it go. The interesting thing I think about movies and the dialogue that movies, the conversations that movies have with you, is that you see the poster and or you see the trailer, and immediately you start writing a movie in your head. And you say like, oh, this is going to be great. That's why I want to see if it paid off the images that I have in my head. And then, you go to it. And as you go to it, you're filling in like, oh, man, this kind of thing just happened to me just like this. And, wow, wouldn't it be cooler if this kind of thing happened or that? If you're a creative person, your mind is just clicking away when you're watching, especially brilliant stuff. Even if you're watching terrible stuff. You're saying, oh, this could have been better if he'd done this and this and this. And then the best thing is, if you're a writer, you can just go home and do that. You can erase the mistakes of somebody else's mistakes. But that's always the fun of it. Like I said, be a film goer first, a filmmaker second. I'm often amazed. I'll be in even professional meetings with studio executives, and I'll say, "Hey, what movies did you go see this weekend?" And I'll say, "Oh, I didn't see anything." It's like, well, what's the last movie you saw? Like, I don't know, about 3-4 months ago. And I'm like, wow, you're making movies and you don't watch movies?
Yeah.
I can't breathe if I haven't seen the movies.
Yeah.
You know, I'll watch if I can't get to theaters. I'll get. I got 3 movies I'm going to watch this weekend. It's because I missed them, and I was kind of upset that I missed them. But
they go so fast now that you miss them. You don't see them in the theater that week or the second week. Yeah. A lot of times they're gone.
Yeah, exactly. And they're the tentpole movies are these huge movies, and I'm embarrassed. Yeah. You know, okay, I'll tell you, I'm watching Spy. I'm watching Jurassic World, and San Andreas because I love action movies, and I missed all 3. Okay. And
I've seen Jurassic World about 50 times now because it's like my son's favorite movie. So, but I sit there. It's funny. I watch it and I like pick it apart, like the screenplay and everything. You know, like I try to find something I can do while I'm watching it. I'm like, okay, well, we're in Act 2 and what's going on.
See, I do that all the time, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I will try to watch without doing that. Inevitably, I'm sitting there going, "Oh, okay, that's a nice handshake. That's a nice, you know." Oh, okay, the bad guy's moving in. That's cool. And midpoint seems nice. Just seeing the scaffolding. I'm sure, like architects probably go, you know, to the Disney concert hall and say, "Oh, you know, I don't know what the girders are in the middle of that thing. Like, how does that thing keep from falling down?" I'm sure you do that they do that all the time. Or like I say, carpenters or painters are probably, painters will always lean in and watch other people's brush strokes. In fact, that's one of the things I like is you learn art by watching other artists in other disciplines. So, you know, you go to a museum and you see guys, you know, will be there with an easel repainting the great masters. And I always think, oh, wow, that's so interesting. And what they're doing is they're trying to copy brushstroke for brushstroke. What did Rembrandt do? And then they take that and they learn from that. So I say, okay, great. There's no sin in watching movies, getting inspired by them, trying to pick them apart as much as you can. Sometimes I will try to write the dialogue from memory just to get it in the flow of it. And then put your own spin on it, write your own thing. You know, take it the next step. Try to figure out, like, is there a flaw in you know, Citizen Kane? You know, can you take a scene from Citizen Kane and blue page it in such a way that it makes it better, or would you just destroy it if you got it? I'm often challenging young writers. I say, like, well, you have to be able to look at the movies, the top 10 movies in theaters right now, and say, what would you have done to make it better? Because inevitably that's what you're being asked to do. You know, the standard is I get a screenplay like at 6 p.m. on a Monday, and they say, "Hey, Rob, you know, bring the script back, and you're meeting with the producer on Monday. Tomorrow at 10, and we want to talk about what you're going to do to improve the movie." And sometimes you're reading them, and it's like, well, this is an amazing movie. You know, this is really great. What do they want to do, you know, to it? And you have to figure out, okay, well, look, I would do this and this and this, and the characters are kind of a little bit limp, and you know, the structure could be a lot tighter. I think that this idea that was developed late should probably come in earlier, and stuff like that. And that's the, you know, you're painting over a Rembrandt, but you're trying to. You want to feel like, yeah, I can make any movie better. And when you have that feeling, then it's like, okay, good. I'm solidly, somebody's going to agree with me, and there's a place for me in the industry. You know, hopefully I'll get a lot of work.
Can you talk a little bit about, you know, I'm not sure that it's is there something that jumps out at you? Like if you're starting a screenplay, what are kind of the common things that you see that, I mean, I don't know if you sit around reading screenplays nowadays. Oh yeah. You know what I mean? Are there things that, like, you know, advice you can give to people who are writing screenplays, that things that kind of jump out as red flags that, okay, this maybe is not going to be very well written or whatever?
Right, exactly. And I'll tell people, I throw most scripts away, most scripts that are not, I'll say it this way. If I'm reading like David Koepp or Aaron Sorkin or, you know, one of those guys, I'll read the script from top to bottom. You know, Quentin Tarantino, you know, when Hateful Eight came out, I couldn't wait to read it. I knew it was like the wrong thing to do, but I ate that thing up. It's just his writing is just poetry, and it's a sin that I'm sorry to have committed. I'll atone for it at some point, but it was just a brilliant piece of writing. So I'll read that top to bottom. Usually if a friend gives me a script, and I have to read it, I will. But if I don't have to read it, I'll always tell them I'm probably only going to read the first 5 pages. If you're lucky, I'll read 8 or 12. But I'm probably going to throw it away at some point, and I'll tell you why. And it's usually because there's people think that a 120-page screenplay, you can just write pages. I'll just write until I get up to 120, like it's a book.
Right.
But every page on a screenplay, there is a requirement for it. On the first page, you have to do a lot of things. The first 3 pages, there's a ton of stuff you need to do as far as setting up the world and the character and engaging me into that character, and showing me what's great about the character, what's flawed about the character, starting to introduce the idea of an inciting incident, drawing me into the story a little bit, and then boom, whatever, landing me with an inciting incident that's going to pull me through the rest of the movie. If in those first 12 pages I don't have that, then I'm just tossing it because I know the guy doesn't know what he's doing. It's like, when you've seen somebody who can't throw very well, if you see a wobbly football, there's a big problem there. If you see the guy, doesn't plant his feet and stuff, if you've played enough football, from the time that the guy backs up and pulls his hand back, the guy doesn't know what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Same thing is true of a screenplay. It's like, this is going to be torture. And so I'll draw a red line in it, and I'll say I would have stopped reading here because the wheels were way off the wagon, and then I'll go. But yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, because I want to see, at least like a good setup of a great character that I can deal with, an inciting incident that means something, a midpoint that is dynamic in its shift in storytelling and the dynamics of the story, an all is lost that is meaningful, where the all that is driven forward during the entire movie is the thing that is lost, and now, oh no, what's going to happen? And then, and then a great bring me home, do that. The other thing that I see that's missing is meaning. Like a lot of times people will just sit down and write, and I really don't have any idea, like what is this about? What do you want the takeaway to be? Yeah. How do you want this to move me? How are you trying to change my mind about something? What are you trying to show me? And there's nothing. It's just, I just wanted to write a detective movie, see if I could do it. Like, well, yeah, that you've done, but it's confection. It's just sugar cake.
Right.
You look at something like Hamlet, and the first line of Hamlet. I always like think every writer should know it. No writer does, but it's the first line. Is Hall 2 goes there, and it's great. It's you come most quickly upon your hour, and whatever, and they're talking, and it's very quickly the conversation is, what's going on? Why is this guy so edgy? And has the ghost appeared yet? The ghost, whatever. I was like, oh yeah. And then the ghost appears like 6 pages in, and it says to Hamlet, yeah, you got to kill your stepdad. And, and then it's ripping and roaring. Right. And that's Shakespeare zillions of years ago. And he knew that you have to pull the readers, you have to drag the reader's eyes through the story. You have to drag the audience member who is preoccupied with popcorn and is their seat comfortable, and whatever, is their slushy the right flavor. You have to yank them into the story and go, ask meaningful questions right away, so that so that you've got the person's attention, and then give it weight and meaning, and have the story last with them afterwards. And that I would say of 100 scripts I've read in the last couple of years, maybe 1 or 2 have meaning beyond the words on the paper. for me, I sometimes will blame that on the software, that everybody will start writing the screenplay before they know what the screenplay is about. They'll try to figure it out afterwards. And a lot of people are like, "Hey man, it's just jazz, dude. I just want to figure it out. Like you're roaching my buzz with your whole story and theme stuff." I'm like, "Okay, fine, do it. Do it to get through it, but I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to read it until you say you have to read this because it is important that, this movie has weight and gravity. It makes me cry every time I read it." That's the screenplay you want to read. That one, even if it's poorly executed, is a better read than the perfectly, scaled, piece of crap confection, whatever.
Right.
A great, a terrible steak is better than a fantastic piece of bread.
Okay. That's a good analogy. So let me ask you something. When do you find now? I mean, one of the biggest mistakes that I made, I recently, probably 4 years ago, after kind of giving up for a while, I started going back to writing again and started making all the mistakes that I made back when I was in my 20s. One of the big ones was, talking to people who would tell me, "Hey, just write, just every day write." But my interpretation of that was, oh, well, I should start writing my screenplay. And I immediately realized that I wrote a first draft that was terrible, and it was like, I didn't know who my characters were. I would go off on a tangent. I would go here and there. And now what I do, and I've talked to a number of screenwriters that I really respect, and they've kind of agreed with me, is, I'll spend a lot more time now going, sitting down at a Starbucks, getting into a place where I can kind of get into my groove and just writing note after note after note and like throwing out, pages of stuff that I write and not really even thinking about writing the screenplay until everything has been completely thought out and worked out in my head. And then once I sit down to write, which for me is kind of I hate sitting down to write, but
I think
you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
And it was funny. I was talking to Alex.
That is what you're saying is exactly. I mean, if whatever anybody gets out of this podcast, like that at its core, circle that, highlight it in yellow, whatever, put exclamation marks by it. That is the core of it. That so many people think writing is sitting down like, fade in, interior, house, day, and going and my thing is, even with story format, like I don't care if it fades in or if it doesn't. I don't care if it's interior or exterior. I don't care where it is happening, whatever. I just care about what are these two people talking about, and what's in their heart and all of that. And so it's the cards. It's just what am I saying? I've got 3 pages to hold. My 3 first pages that anybody's going to read. What do I have to say that's going to hold their attention? You look at the Pixar stuff, it's all like dynamic openings, the NASCAR, and here's the fastest guy in the world. He's cocky and arrogant. Everybody loves him, but his pit crew quits on him. Awesome. In the Incredibles, oh man, whatever. After the first thing with the interviews, Bob Parr saves 8 people, 8 sets of people and is late to his own wedding. Awesome. Okay, great. I know what's great about him. I know what's terrible about him, and that's all like just Brad Bird sitting down with, with a pen on a pad and just saying, okay, I'm going to throw away 20 openings, until I can find one that's just purely brilliant. And you don't write that just longhand. You say, okay, well, he's going to save a cat in a tree, and then he's going to save the thing. And Bon Voyage is a character and Syndrome is a character. Okay, great. How can I mix that up? And then how can I have the last thing he does be something that he can be convicted for and that will end, being superheroes forever? Great. It should be a train crash. Everybody hurts their necks. Nobody dies, blah, 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 whatever. And then he's got the whole thing kind of worked out perfectly. Then and only then does he sit down and write it. And then as you're writing it, you're not going to throw stuff away. You know what the parameters are of doing it, and it makes the writing so much easier. You're not pulling it out of you're not like, oh, I'm climbing a mountain to get these things out. You're writing with joy and enthusiasm because you know what the payoff is, and like, oh, great, I've got I'm showing off how great this character is. You're writing with a smile. You know, I laugh all the time when I'm writing, because the surprises are like, oh, good, this little turn of dialogue, and I know it's not going to waste because I know the attitude of the character even before I sat down to write it. You know, and I've said to myself, I've made a bet with myself, I bet I can come up with some really awesome jokes between these two characters in this situation. And if I point it in the right direction, if I have a page and a half, 2 pages to do it, I know that this is my last line. You know, when I was working with Sorkin, all he would do was he would write down the last line of dialogue for the scene on a card, and that would be the card for that scene. Mm-hmm. And then the conversation would be like, okay, great. I know the characters. I know the thrust of it. I will find my way to it, but I know that I'm going to land it. If I stick to landing, that's the last line of the scene. So that's the game. That's the fun of it, you know?
Right.
And when you're writing like that, and you're writing with that enthusiasm and that sure-footedness, then you're reading like that. You know, you're not. You know, how many times have you read scripts and you just say, "Where is this going?" You know, this is going nowhere. He already said this. He said this 3 pages ago. I don't need to have this argument again. Well, geez, where am I now? You know, oh, it's a 40-page first act. You know, and you're just saying, you know, what are you doing? Yeah, it's like you know, you watch somebody. I always use sports analogies, but you know, it's like 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, you know, whatever. No, the buzzer goes off and the game is over. You know, the athlete knows where he's got to go. He's got 3 seconds to get, you know, cross court. He's 2 points behind, so he's got to nail the 3. You know, so he knows where he's got to pull up. Hopefully, he's done it a bunch of times, and you know, and he's going to sink it. I'll say one other thing, because when I was talking about like learning from other disciplines, I've been kind of watching the way people learn how to play music a lot recently, just as a way to kind of shorthand conversations with writers about like how to learn how to write. And when you're starting to write, like starting to learn piano, you don't sit down and learn like, you know, Mozart's concerto. You know, the first time you sit down at the piano, you learn, you know, either chopsticks or you learn Mary Had a Little Lamb. You know, you learn the easiest thing in the world. So when people ask me like, okay, well, what is missing now with screenwriting teaching, and what are we missing in general? Why are so many new screenwriters coming out and they just can't write? I say, well, look, do what you do if you were learning piano. Tell me the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears and make it compelling. Mm-hmm. And the first question I'll ask is, okay, great. It's a very short story. You can tell it in 2 minutes. But first question, who's the main character in Goldilocks and Three Bears? And people say, oh, it's Goldilocks. I say, no. No, it is not. You're rewriting Goldilocks and Three Bears. Goldilocks and Three Bears is a crime story, and then it's a detective story. Right? You know, Goldilocks comes in and she basically breaks into a house, commits 3 crimes. And then the baby bear, main character, you know, figures out the crime. You know, one to the other to the, oh my God, there's somebody in my bed. And then, you know, and then off you go. And so that's the character with the drive. The first part with Goldilocks is just a prologue. Good. Okay, fine. So motivate the bear. You know, the bear really, you know, has had a long walk, is really hungry, and just wants to sit, play Nintendo, and take a nap. You know, that's the drive of the character. So if you can get through that story, or even the 3 pigs, you know, I believe the brick pig is the main pig in the is the main character, not the wolf, and not either of the other 2 pigs. So, but find a point of view, or if you want to tell it from the wolf's point of view, tell it from the wolf's point of view. Why does he want to blow down these houses? You know, those fundamental questions that you ask yourself as you're telling these 3-minute stories are the same exact things that you'll try to tackle if you're doing a 110, 120-page screenplay. And you'll get to cut your teeth on them. You know, you'll get to make your mistakes on a 3-minute pitch, as opposed to waiting 3 months and writing a whole story. You know, an unmotivated baby bear is the same sin you're going to commit in your whole colossal thing. You know, without a point of view, without a, like, why are you telling the story of this crime and this detective thing? What tone are you using as you're telling it? Are you comedic? Is it a horror movie? It's kind of a horror movie to me. This lady is broken as she's sleeping in my bed. Oh no, whatever. It's a single white female.
It definitely could have gone bad fast.
Exactly. And what did the bear do? Does the bear eat her? Does she? What does she do when she's caught? Can they call the cops? All that kind of stuff. All that story fun is have it on a small level. Play chopsticks. Learn how to play chopsticks. When chopsticks sounds good, then move on to a bigger story, and and tell that really well, and then move on. Start bringing your own. And each time you're going to bring your own elements in, but ultimately you'll be able to say, okay, this is a story of the Prince of Asgard, who whose father, who's sought the love of his father for an eternity, and has never thought himself worthy of the kingdom of Asgard, and now he is, now he has this great challenge in front of him, and blah 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 blah. And again, you're using the same skills that you've cut your teeth on the other stories. Now you're ready to tell that story because you've found a point of view. There's a great takeaway. You probably by then have gotten some sense of, what's boring, what works and what doesn't work. Where what with you resonates, what kind of great things can you come up with, that work for the story. And then I don't know. I was thinking like you'd be so much better off a year into it than by slogging away and just writing terrible screenplays one after the other.
Are you kind of constantly going through and looking at your scene and saying, okay, do we, can we cut this, or what are we establishing? What's the beginning, middle, and ending of this scene? What is this character trying to get, or whatever? Do you kind of go through and analyze like that?
Always. Yeah. The first time in fact, I don't even write my first draft on the computer. I think it's like third or fourth draft goes on the computer. The first couple of drafts are actually on on
iPhone.
Yeah, right, exactly. Sometimes I'll just dictate it off, whatever. Okay, cop pulling me over. Yes, I am dictating my screenplay into my phone as I go. But yeah, that you just want to get the ideas down. So sometimes, my first draft through, and I'll go into it thinking, oh, this is going to be golden. I'm just going to write it once and publish it. But I'll write it down, and then I'll read it through. I'll write it again, longhand. And then when I feel like it's kind of ready, I'll type it. And then I'll type it, immediately print it. And I actually wish there was some way that I could squeeze all the words over to the right, over to the left side, because I'm going to basically rewrite the entire scene, top to bottom. Once I've seen it and I say, this is good, not great. Then I rewrite it again. And all the while through, I'm asking myself, okay, is this character driven? Are the obstacles clear? Is it essentially, like, the biggest question is it clear what this scene's about? The scene should not be about 2 or 3 things. It should be about one thing. I want to get one idea, introduce it, sell the audience on this idea, end the scene, move out. So if I have too long a discussion about baseball at the beginning of the scene, that's all going to go. If I've overmade my point, I get out. So I'll start doing that. But I'm super hard on those scenes. Usually in the afternoon. In the morning, I'm more creative. So I'll just kind of write. I'll just sit and Robert Rodriguez gave me this tip, and whatever he was talking on another podcast, and gave this tip, and I thought, oh, that's brilliant. So the worst thing about waking up is the waking up. He's kind of getting out of bed, making breakfast, and all that stuff. So he just keeps a pad by his bed, and when he wakes up, he just turns on the light and starts working. And then after an hour or so, then he puts it away, makes his coffee, and gets into his daily routine. And I thought, okay, that's awesome. So that's what I do now. I'll get up, I'll just kind of turn on the night light and just start writing. And the world is quiet. if I've asked myself great questions before I went to sleep, I probably solved them during the night. So I'm really ready to go.
Well, it sounds very, very similar to a book. I'm not sure if it's called The Creative Mind or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about how the state of mind that you're in when you are half awake is that you're way, way into your right side of your brain. Yeah. So the creative ideas just are flowing. So yeah, especially like if you wake up in the middle of the night, or when you wake up early in the morning and all that, before your brain starts focusing on anything, exactly. that's probably the most creative time.
Right, exactly. What was it? Aaron Sorkin, he says he takes 10 showers a day. I'm pretty sure it's the same. It's a little weird, but it's the same thing. That right. you're kind of getting into that almost meditative state. And I find personally, the longer I'm awake, like midday to the afternoon, the critic wakes up and he just starts telling me how terrible, what a terrible writer I am, and how I should just pack it up and go back to Detroit, and that medicine probably wasn't that bad of an idea, and all that, and so that guy's live and kicking the longer I'm awake, and that's why I usually in the afternoon, because that guy's valuable too. He holds me to a higher standard. He's easily bored, so he will. He's the cross out. As I'm crossing out huge pages of dialogue, he's that guy. But I need that guy. I just don't want him in the morning when I'm composing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. I'm looking forward to reading this thing, because I do think that there's even with actors, right? You get into a slightly meditative state. You want to get nice and relaxed and let the creative process go. Be able to access your emotions, not be so guarded. Make yourself laugh, make yourself cry. John August says he will go and look in the mirror and wait until think of things that will make him cry, and then once he starts crying, then he goes and starts writing, because then he's in state. He's in a very emotional mood, and he finds that the writing he does in that is better, is in that mood, those are the scenes when you're going to need to cry. Obviously you don't do it through the entire movie, you just do it through those key scenes where you want people to cry. I will play, Danny Elfman or some like really kind of rousing music for action scenes. And a lot of times I'll just make sure I'm in a really great mood if I'm writing comedy. I rarely will, and this is another fun thing for me, I rarely write movies in sequence. I always, I eat my dessert first. So, if once I have my movie up on the wall or, on the door, and I've outlined it, or maybe there are a couple of scenes that I've kind of, where I have some general ideas where I'm going to go, I'll pick the one that I really, really want to write. Usually the third act, what I call the super freak, where you're gonna cry, where Luke Skywalker turns off the tracking machine and uses the Force and blows up the Death Star, right? That's the first scene. That's going to be the most awesome scene anyway. And I know I'm going to rewrite it a bunch of times, but it's going to be the most fun to write. And so I'll just sit down and I'll write that one, and then I'll print it up, put it in a book, put it in my little notebook with with my little subdividers, and then I'll go back and I'll write the second most exciting scene, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. So by the time I'm down to the last scene, I've got the energy of all the other scenes that I've written, and the hard scene, usually the first scene, the scene that I hate writing the most. That'll have all of that energy in it, and I'll be so much more comfortable with my characters. I'll know their voices. I know what makes them tick. What's cool and playable about them, and then I can just make a meal of those hard scenes. I do that.
Do you typically find your character in scenes that are like, if you're struggling to find who a character is? Maybe there's a scene that takes place in the second act where it's like, oh, well, that's who he is, and then you can kind of put that back into the first act, and now you're like, I know he's got to get to this point.
Exactly. And that's why, like even the reading of a screenplay, right? That scene can't be buried. The scene where I know where that character is, that scene's got to be his introduction or her introduction. That the first scene, and it's funny, right before we started talking, I'm breaking a new story for another screenplay. I like to write specs. So I just finished one, so that's off kind of in the hands of an actor right now. And in my spare time, as I'm waiting, as I'm just kind of sweating it out, I started breaking another story. And this was a story I just came up with at a party. I was talking to some friends, and I said, well, why isn't there a movie like this? Where these characters come together for this reason, and you get this and this and whatever. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a great movie. And I said, okay, good. Don't say anything else, because you're gonna, you're gonna take all the fun of actually having written it away from me, because he was telling me what's great about my idea. So I said, okay, great. I ran home and I just started, putting it up on cards, and saying, okay, I think I have enough fun scenes to do this. I think there are enough twists and turns, and it's got emotional impact, and it's about, some things that I'm dealing, my son just went off to college, so I'm dealing with all that stuff. And so this is a perfect movie for me right now. I'm writing my own favorite movie, right? If this movie was in theaters, I would be the first in line to see it. And so that's my first step. Great. Okay, good. It's gonna make me cry. It's gonna make me think about, about families and how important they are, and father and son relationships and all that. That's the emotional template. And then it's got fun sci-fi stuff with it, and a bunch of really great action, and great, that'll be good. Then I start playing around with it. Okay, good. Well, who's the antagonist? Who's the protagonist? Antagonists run, usually run the store with action movies. So great, I'll start into that. And like we were just talking about, like when I introduce these characters, I want to introduce them doing something dynamic and that reveals their character. I don't want you to just say, oh, these are some pages about this. It should be, oh, wow, this is really cool to watch. This character is going to be compelling and fun to watch go through this movie. And if I'm an actor, boy, do I want to play this character. So now I'm challenging myself. The other step, which is, what does an actor want to read? What does a great actor want to read when they pick up a screenplay? First they want to appear on the first page or two. That's important, because they're not going to read beyond that. They have to appear on page one, and the first thing they read has to be, oh, that's awesome, I like this guy, and he's got an edge, he's got something fun, and he's doing something in a really cool way, and then it's got to keep pulling him through. So that was most of the morning. Was just, okay, I got two characters. I want to introduce them. I want to have them do cool things. They have to do different cool things. They have to, I want them to meet cute. That's always a fun thing. I know they're going to have to meet. So what's going to be their cute meet? And I figured, okay, great, precinct station. They're both bad kids. And they've both been busted for doing, whatever it is they've been doing. And so, that'll be fun. And what if they meet a third guy while they're there, and blah, 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 blah. And so that was me plotting this thing. So I think I'm on sure footing with where I'm introducing these characters. They all have dynamics, and they all feel like characters great actors would want to play. At the very least, the executive reading it will get what I'm doing. And so I think I'm okay there. It may go through, 50, 60 changes by the time I'm done, but I think I'm on sure footing. Now I'm going to go on to the second section, and I just want to know at that point, what are the, how can I line up a really fun story for these three? And I know, like I said, I've done my homework. I know the inciting incident. I know the midpoint. I know the end of Act 2. I know my super freak. So, and that's all.
I'm going to take
that's all I know right now. Yeah. Super freak is from Little Miss Sunshine, right? Where we're all through the movie. They've been saying like, hey, we're not going to go if you're not going to win. Winning is the most important thing in the world in this thing, and in this family, if you're not a winner, you're nothing. And she says, oh, Daddy, I'm going to win. When they get up on stage, she gets up on stage, and it's this routine that a grandfather choreographed for her, and she's dancing the Super Freak and doing a strip show. And in that, and all the audience is yelling at him and all that stuff. And at that moment, the dad steps up, jumps up on stage and starts dancing, and the whole family dances. And that's what every movie is striving to do, right? That there's the thing that you're driving through all the way through in Avatar or whatever, the thing that you want the most. And then in that moment, you say, you know what? Not so important. The other thing, the underdog value is way more important. And that's what the movie's about. So that's in the DNA of every scene in the movie. That's why I say, like, I'll throw it away in the first 6 pages because I know it's not there. You know, if it's not organic to the pages, then it's just not going to be, you know, no matter how many pages I read. If I read all the way to the end, it's not going to be there because it's not there in the first page. You know,
what you're saying is the thing that they think they want is not what they actually need or what they actually want.
Exactly. Okay. So I should be rooting for them. When I see Lightning McQueen, get in a 3-way tie at the end of the movie, and I see his hit crew quit. You know the right movies to talk to me about. Good. But I know what I want that movie to be. Because again, the math of storytelling, and this is just me. I've just found it that the inciting incident and the super freak are the exact mirror opposites of each other. So I'll keep talking Incredibles too. Better yet, Finding Nemo, right? In Finding Nemo, the inciting incident is that he yells at his kid for being unsafe, and the kid in defiance goes and touches the boat, and then that, gets caught and takes him off forever. Mm-hmm. The super freak of that is his son is saying, I can save these fish. The father knows it's dangerous, and the father makes the opposite choice. The father says, you know what? I trust you. I love you and I trust you. Go do it. It's a much more dangerous thing, than touching a boat. Is risking your life to do the thing. And and of course the son winds up, it seems like he's hurt. He's on the bottom of the ocean floor, and the father feels like crap, but he knows that he's done the right thing by his son. He's let his son grow. And then the father and son have this really fantastic moment where they bond. Mm-hmm. And he says, "Hey, Sammy Plankton doesn't know anything," and whatever. I've seen all this stuff, right? Now, if you look at a movie like that, and you think, "Oh, okay, well, that's just a Pixar movie." But if you look at Flight has the exact same ending. In the critical moment, does he tell the truth or does he lie? He chooses to tell the truth, right? He's lied to get himself into it in the inciting incident. He tells the truth to essentially the same panel in the Super Freak, and in so doing, his son comes back, and his son talks to him in prison, and there's not a dry eye in the house. So at every level, everybody's telling the same. All great storytellers are using very similar templates to tell their stories. The same as all great quarterbacks drop back in the same way and deliver a ball in the same way. And so for us as storytellers, it's a question of, okay, what is that? What is the science of, what is the sweet science of storytelling, and what are people looking at when they read my stuff? And what is that specifically, what is that giving us when we sit down to read or write a great screenplay? Yeah.
It's funny because I just recently wrote an article about how people who have kids can be screenwriters even though they're busy all the time. And one of the biggest, tips I gave or whatever was, every time you're watching a Pixar movie, you're watching some of the best screenplay structure that's been created. It's like the storytelling is so amazing on Finding Nemo, The Incredible. I mean, basically any Pixar movie, Yeah. And, I would sit there and I'd like draw a line down the middle of a sheet of paper and just beat for beat. Like I did this a month ago with Finding Nemo, and it helped me so much to learn structure, just writing out all the beats of Finding Nemo and what happens and whatever. And then you can go back and kind of use that structure, for your own story or just kind of internalize it, I guess.
Well, it just came up, Finding Nemo just came up in a studio meeting I had, just a couple days ago. And it was about, and it's a fantastic road picture. It's a guy who holds on to the past and a person who can't remember 10 seconds ago. And so there's a unity of opposites. Those two characters are really well paired. And then every single challenge they have is a challenge of trust for Marlon. That it's, yeah, sure, it's fun and games, but it's, do you go through the trench or over the trench? She says through is the better way because she knows something. She doesn't know why she knows it. She doesn't know the fish has told her, but she says through the trench is safer. He doesn't trust her. They go over the trench. Bad things happen. On down the line, just bad. He doesn't trust her for any reason. And then finally they get to they're on the whale's tongue, and she says, "Let go." It's a great scene, and it's a scene that would be great in any movie. She says, "Let go." The whale is telling me that we should let go of the tongue, and that everything will be okay. And he says, "You don't know these things, Nemo. You always think you do, but you don't." And she says, "Let go, just let go." And in that moment, that's midpoint, right? At that moment, he lets go of the tongue. They go back to the back of the throat, and everything works out. Now they're in Sydney, and at those moments, that's story gold. That's Andrew Stanton, who is one of the greatest storytellers that ever lived. A guy who has studied everything and who is the architect of all of that stuff at Pixar.
Did you ever read the book Creative Inc.?
Yeah, I believe I'm in Creative Inc.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to ask because I was like, it sounds like you would probably be in that.
Yeah, because there was this revolution at Disney where some of the new guys, where because John had come around. John was there for Bolt, but only for half of Bolt. So Bolt was kind of developed outside of him, and then he took it and did what he could with it in the time he had left. And it's a great movie. And then The Princess and the Frog was the first one he did from stem to stern. And so and at a certain point, I heard that Princess and the Frog was almost released as a Pixar film because they had so much involvement in it. We were up there every 3 months in Emeryville at Pixar, and John was there 2-3 times a week, like all the time. It was great. Just working with him, he would get in the sandbox and jump in and suggest stuff. It was fantastic. So I was so in the reverie. Wait, give me the question again, because I was like, "It was awesome!" Like talking about playing in the sandbox. Give me the question again.
Well, I mean, I just love the the concept of how movies came together and how there was kind of the creative committee there that would look at a story piece by piece, or put it up on a wall. And people would kind of like talk about the weaknesses and that would be kind of the way of working out a story versus somebody just sitting by themselves.
Exactly. And it's a little bit, it's funny because it's brutal. That's the part nobody tells you about is that it is completely honest, and everybody is, the emphasis is, John, when he won the Student Academy Award, like I think twice or 3 times. And when they asked him, what he was doing, how, was he trying to win awards or what, or he seemed to have like rigged the game. He said, "No, I make films. I try to make films as well as I can. I'm just trying to make good movies. And it just happens to be that people give awards to movies that are good, and right. When they had asked him about his 14 Academy Award streak, he said, he's essentially the same thing. Look, I just want to make good movies. They're not movies for kids. That's the thing everybody misses. They're not movies for kids. They're movies for John and and Andrew and those guys. And they're really just entertaining themselves. They happen to be great filmmakers, and they're fantastic writers. And they are looking at the films they're looking at great independent films. They're looking at, they're vociferous. There's always a screening there. And they're trying to move the form to the next level. with what they have. They have shiny colors and computer graphics and all that stuff. But really, they're just trying to make the best movies humanly possible. And so you can learn a ton from every one of those movies.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things about like the Blu-rays is that they show all the behind the scenes. And I mean, they put a lot of, energy into create, like going around I can't remember which one it was, but they were just, going around the whole studio and talking about what everybody was doing and everything. And as an outsider, it's just amazing to get that kind of, insight.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like the best place in the world to work, basically.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, and the Disney thing too, where it is basically you have a room, and you always want that. With Fresh Prince was a little bit like that. Studio 60 with Aaron Sorkin, a lot like that, where people are dedicated to telling great stories, and you start off in the day and it was not uncommon for people to say, "Hey, I had a dream about your movie. I want to talk to you about it." And and just people are that committed where they say, "Okay, here's what you can do," and they just start going.
Right.
And I would leave my door open just for that, because everybody was coming in with new ideas, and there was always this excitement. And you have an idea, and everybody's the notion is, plus it. Make this. How can we make this a little bit better? Better by a deviation of one. And but that's the environment that you want. Is everybody is down. Everybody is just having a blast. Everybody knows that the thing you will ultimately do is really special, and they know, like any great team, they know that what you're going to do is, once they pass you the ball, you're going to do something even more special with it. And the thing that they see next week or whatever is going to be even better. That's everybody. That's a great environment. Sometimes I'll think like, they're few and far between, but I think everybody is striving to do that. Sometimes they're just not the horses. So the advantage you get with a Pixar environment or, like a Disney, is that the best people are going to show up at your door, and they're going to want to work all night,
Right.
And so it is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that great things are going to happen. There's a great story that Ed Catmull talks about in his book. And it's that he says he would ask a room full of people, a room full of like managers, if you had a great idea or the great team, which would you rather have? Okay, great. You have a great idea and you have whatever team. You have a great team and a so-so an idea. And he said they would always go 50-50. Oh, great idea, great team. He says, nope, without question. If you have a great idea and a terrible team or a mediocre team, the mediocre team will destroy the great idea. If you have a great team and mediocre idea, the great team will instantly discover that you have a mediocre idea. They'll either throw it out or they'll improve it in such a way that it will be great. So 100 times out of 100, the great team will make a great product. The mediocre team with a great idea, no matter how many great ideas you feed into that mediocre team, they're going to blow it. So, so that's always the thing. Like trust the process, trust the talent. Get great people. Find a way to, lure them there. Apple computers, same way. Google. You get guys who don't mind staying up all night to make it great, and then you just kick back. You give them whatever you need, whatever they need to keep going, and it's fantastic. Yeah. So here's a story I was going to tell about the Burbank Revolution, right? So John gets in there, and there's a bunch of old school guys at Disney. I'm telling tales out of school a little bit, but there's a bunch of the guys who've been at Disney forever, and their thing is, look, it's Disney. It's going to be Disney, no matter what you do. But John was bringing this whole new school thing, and John had actually come from Disney originally before he went up to Emeryville and came back. So he knew what he was talking about, but and he was saying like, look, here's the way, you spend a lot of time on the story, you bring in some screenwriters, you have, these great discussions, you throw away 2/3 of the movie every screening, every 3 months, you do 6 screenings, and then ultimately what you wind up with is the best possible story possible, in the world, and then you go nuts on the animation just to make it as great as you possibly can. But story is king, and then the animation comes second. And people are like, what are you talking about? That's heretic, burn him, whatever, and so for me, I was like, look, I completely, being from TV, I was like, yes, that is awesome. That's exactly what we should be doing. And I would, my door was always open. Anytime there was new writers, I would go to their office, introduce myself, and I would just sit down and say, hey, what are you working on? What kind of problems are you having? I'm using you as my break, and I'm going to try to be as collaborative as possible. I'm just going to empty my brain out to you, and then this will be great for me, and then I'm just going to go back to my office. And eventually, like some of the other writers, they would come around to me and they would say, hey, Rob, what are you working on? And we all started working on everybody else's projects. So I did a lot of work on Frozen. I did a lot of work on Tangled, on Wreck-It Ralph, months and months, on all of those projects, simply because I thought the most important thing to do was a good movie. And that becomes the spirit of the place. So Ed talks about that a lot. Like, okay, it was infectious because that's what they do up in Emeryville. It's not just, here's your movie, it's got your name on it, and screw you. It all goes under the Disney, the Disney Pixar banner, and it all has to be of quality. And if your movie stinks, the people that are, the people are going to be resistant to come into my movie, next year. Right. And but if my movie is great, then it feeds, Mark's movie next year. And, Don's movie the next year. And, Ron and John's, they've got another one. And boom, I knew that would happen. And sure enough, it did. The Princess and the Frog did its numbers. Tangled did even better numbers. And then Frozen is like, the Titanic.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's like there is not a single dad of a daughter in America who can't sing, do you want to build a snowman? That's a phenomenon. That's the same thing I saw on Fresh Prince, where people need to trust it. In the first 2 episodes, they need to be consistent. And then the third thing, everybody goes nuts. And then you've built a studio. Yeah. But that's fun. But there was always over there the big resistance. People just saying like, I don't know. I don't buy into this man's bag of magic,
Get out of here with your crazy ideas.
Yeah, exactly. The Earth is flat. It's always been flat. It's always going to be flat. Get out of here with it.
So is that something that happens a lot? I mean, do you have like a lot of people who are just kind of like helping collaborate, and then at the end of the day, there's like the people that are basically credited as writing it? I mean, is that kind of common?
Well, yeah, exactly. And that happens in TV all the time. Mm-hmm. There's a great writer, Earl Pomerantz, and his acceptance for, I believe, winning an Emmy for Taxi was, I'd like to thank the Academy and thank all the actual writers who worked on it, because there's not a single word of what I wrote in this movie, on the episode you've seen, and that's basically it. You just kind of trust that everybody is going to have their hand in everybody else's pie. And ultimately, it's better. The room is what is writing the movies and the TV shows. The individual, there's a little bit of pride of ownership, but there's not. It's not like if you just sit down and do a webcast, or or just point a camera at yourself and you write your own dialogue and everything. Like no, you're gonna get a little bit of vox populi. You're going to get the consensus of the room, and there's a beauty in that. When it's well managed, you get some of that. You get some of the okay, great. The room thinks this, but then you also get, like I say, people going into their caves and writing things that are truly from their own heart, and then you go back to the table and you say, please don't change this. this moves me. This to me is the most important scene in the movie. And I just want everybody to buy into my vision. And usually a room that understands great filmmaking will say, yes, this is great. This is truly wonderful. Let's not change this. Let's not step on this. Everybody has their own interpretation of what, a hug between a father and a son is. Let's not make it our own. Let's just go with this thing. Mm-hmm. There's the first bunch of sequences with Tiana and her dad in Princess and the Frog were not originally there. We're not there for a long time. And there was a piece of
the gumbo. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem was people were like, yeah, we love it. The movie is great, but there's no emotional impact to it. And I said, yeah, well, the dream of having a restaurant was just a girl with a dream. And can we give it emotional? Can we have it be have emotional depth when she says my restaurant, those words? And there was this little piece of artwork. There was a drawing of the dad. The dad was not a character in the movie. And I went to the artist. I said, well, why is there this drawing? Was the dad originally a character in there? Because these things are around for years.
Right.
And he said, no. What happened was we knew what Tiana would look like, and I wanted to draw the mother. So I wanted to see what the father would look like, because the way it would go is that the mother and the father would share facial characteristics with Tiana. And I wanted to figure out, okay, well, here's what the dad looks like, and here's what the mom looks like, and here's what Tiana looks like. And so it was just like a mathematical, thing for him. He's like, okay, dad, mom, whatever. This is what the mom looks like. And he said, I knew I wanted her to be hot, so I knew that I wanted all of the kind of other characteristics to be on the dad, and so this is what the dad looks like. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I took that. I said, can I borrow this? And I went into the writer's room and I said, well, this is the most important character in the movie, but he's not here. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I don't know. I have this feeling that Tiana and her dad, whatever, that it's a shared dream. It's a bedtime story they always tell. It's parenting. It's I'm going to have this thing. We're going to do this together. Again, going back to my dad talking to me about, yes, we're going to have a medical practice together. It's going to be so awesome, guts all day. And me going like, oh, okay, Dad. So Tiana is a better child than I,
So the gumbo is guts, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, cut that gumbo. So I wrote it and I just said, well, this is what I think it is. And I hope I'm going to try not to write it too long, which is why those scenes overlap, where they get home and, I'm going to sample the gumbo and, this is the best gumbo I've ever tasted. Dissolved to gumbo is his philosophy, and then him kissing her goodnight, and off they go. That's only about 2.5 to 3 minutes of storytelling. In an animation, every minute is $1 million. So when I showed him the scene, it was a big, huge discussion. Like, oh my God, what has Rob added to this thing? This is terrible. But that was the thing. It's like I felt it, and I felt that the movie would be better for it. And the spirit of collaboration, those guys were like, you know what? Yes, absolutely. And now when you see it, you can't imagine it being without those themes.
Gumbo smells good, Tiana.
I think it's going, Daddy.
Yeah, are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely positive?
Yes.
Okay, I'm about to put this spoon in my...
Wait! Done. What?
Well, sweetheart, this is the best gumbo I've ever tasted. Come here. Our little girl got a gift.
I could have told you that.
A gift this special just gotta be shared.
Hey, everybody, I made gumbo.
Ooh, that smells good.
I got some hush puppies, Tiana. That's right.
The thing about good food, it brings folks together from all walks of life. It warms them right up and it puts little smiles on their faces. And when I open up my own restaurant, I tell you, people are going to line up for miles around just to get a taste of my food.
I Our food.
That's right, baby. Our food.
Because every time she refers to it and she kisses her dad's picture in the beginning, we see the war medal and all that stuff. And it influences the scene when her mom brings the pot and she's saying, oh, your father would have loved this place. All that stuff. Like, yes, now it's working, because
right.
we're not just telling, it's not plot, it's story, it's emotion, it's character. And, so it just made it a lot better, but it wouldn't have happened had I not just kind of,
if he wasn't trying to make her hot.
Yeah, right, exactly. If an artist hadn't been trying to make a hot mom and whatever, but yeah, all of the collaboration, and certainly there were other things, like, and a bunch of them, there were things where people would go the opposite way, where I would say I would be resistant to ideas that later turned out to be brilliant. And just that, for me, the spirit of collaboration being like, you know what? Okay, I won my little battle. I'm gonna see how well I can execute the idea that this person has, and I'm gonna try to plus it as much as I can. But I'm gonna stay out of the way. I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm gonna help it along. And then you watch it and you go, man, I was a jerk. For not believing in the idea at first, and just but it's always better when you just say, okay, trust the process. This person has a vision. This person is an artist too, and it's all going to contribute to this really great gumbo in the end, and it's going to be fantastic.
Right. Are there any kind of rules that Disney has in terms of, like, there always seems to be like two wacky characters that they meet along the way?
I don't know. I think that's just part of storytelling. I think that, like, once you get on the road, you're going to have it's planes, trains, and automobiles, right? Right. There's a movie called The Defiant Ones that I heard was one of John Lasseter's favorite movies, and it's Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis, and it's a darker story. It's about race and whatever, but along the way, there are all the signposts that you see in Toy Story. And just in the genre, like as when I'm looking for structural cousins that when I'm kind of screening movies, I'll look at 5 movies that are in my genre, and a lot of times you'll see, oh, okay, great, yeah, you go to place, you travel in interesting ways, 2 or 3 really interesting vehicles, you stay in interesting places, and you meet interesting people along the way. A lot of times you collect those people as you go, and that's what makes the story really cool. And whether it's whether it's one of those things, or if I'm doing an adult thing, or I was just talking to somebody about doing kind of a superhero road picture, and and the same tenets apply. Those same things make storytelling really, really exciting. You want to meet, like, who are the people who live here, and what are those people, if those people share your dreams, or if there's a new momentum. Each one kind of brings a breath of fresh air to the storytelling. In the case of Princess and the Frog, the question was always, should we meet Louis first or should we meet Ray first? And that was a big debate, because at a certain point we met Ray first, and Ray is so funny, he kind of sucked the energy out of Louis. And
Ray's the crocodile.
The
right?
crocodile, exactly.
Yeah.
The gator. You get in trouble if you say
Sorry.
He's an alligator. He's not a crocodile.
I'm going to edit this.
Man, see, yeah, you talk about rules. That was the thing. Because it's very funny, because I love this, and I tell every writer this. John Lasseter is a mega geek. He's the geek of all geeks. He loves research. So if you're doing Finding Nemo, there are things about there's a ton of research that goes into that. They take weeks and weeks, researching fish and what fish are specific to that area. What do you see? What are the bioluminescent fish that you see in there? Sharks, are they the same? Are they the exact sharks that you would find in those waters? what is that current, all that stuff comes out of the research, and you geek out on that. And, with Princess and the Frog, like, I did a ton of research on frogs. I know exactly what kind of frogs they are, and what frogs eat, what eats frogs, what the environment is like. When they get to New Orleans, you can basically walk you can take a camera and walk that entire thing. We didn't make any of that up. That's all actual New Orleans locations and stuff. Proximities, the graveyard and the church, everything, all one for one. And that stuff is really amazing. Yeah. So when you say like, oh, crocodile, it's like, oh man, people would get kicked out of rooms for that. It's hilarious.
Yeah. But is there? Well, let me move it. How are you doing for time? Okay. You need to wrap it up.
Yeah, 15 more minutes. I can do it.
Okay. Can you talk about just a little bit quickly about the bad guys and kind of how you write them and what kind of rules there are with that in terms of their relationship with the protagonist?
Yeah. Well, with bad guys, it's interesting because I think bad guys run the story in a lot of movies, and people don't really realize that. So they'll use the bad guy as an afterthought. There are rules for them. The bad guy is either going after the same thing as the protagonist, or the bad guy is in opposition to the protagonist in some meaningful way. What they do in, say, a Marvel movie is fantastic, and I love the way that they do antagonists, which is the antagonists in, say, Iron Man 1, Ant-Man, some of the others. The antagonist is using the same devices as the good guy, but in an evil way, right? So even Captain America, right? The Red Skull is from the same experiment as Captain America, as Steve Rogers, but he is the experiment has gone wrong, and now he's doing the wrong things with it. And Captain America, by virtue and everything, is going to defeat him using the same tools. Ant-Man, the same thing, right? The guy has designed his own suit, and he's doing terrible things, and our guy is doing great things, and he's willing to make virtuous sacrifices for it. Iron Man, you have one guy in the suit that's even better, even huger than Iron Man's suit. But Iron Man has, he's fighting for this ideal. He feels guilty that he's the purveyor of all this violence around the world, and he wants to right his wrongs. And that strength is going to carry the day in the third act, right? Okay, so that's one type. The other type is that here is an antagonist in opposition to my guy. He doesn't want, like Facilier, right? Facilier wants the prince, and Tiana wants the prince. Facilier wants him for terrible reasons. He wants his blood. He wants to, do this whole experience, this thing to masquerade, and but Tiana wants him because he's falling in love with him. So they're both after the same guy, and so the all in all is lost is when she's lost the guy, when he's getting married to Charlotte. It gives you a goal, that the guy is trying to win. Darth Vader is trying to kill everybody, and Luke wants to save everybody. Darth Vader is using the same powers, again, the Marvel model, or whatever, the Eternal model, the Joseph Campbell model. Darth Vader is the dark side of the thing that Luke is trying to master. And the story is about, those two, that ability misused and used well. So that's what makes for great stories. Sometimes it's internal, right? It can be a demon, like in Flight. It's alcoholism is the antagonist in that thing, or cocaine usage, right? The addiction in general. So, and there's this great scene at the end of Act 2 where he's about to go to the trial, and you see that they've cleaned the hotel room of all alcohol and everything, whatever. There are people standing outside the door, and he sees that the door next to him is open, and there's a mini bar, and there's all that stuff, right? That's a great. That's a fantastic antagonistic scene because the door is just kind of making this noise. It's the character in the movie. It's fantastic. The same as in Toy Story, where they said, no, there will be no bad guys. The bad guy in Toy Story is just hubris, is selfishness, is that Woody doesn't think there's room on the bed for two toys.
Yeah.
He's Andy's favorite toy. He's the only favorite toy, and he's going to kick Buzz out the window, to maintain his status. And ultimately, he has to learn, he has to flip it. He has to defeat that part of him and say, no, there's room on the bed or in the car for two favorite toys.
By the way, can I just mention something real quick? I think one of the funniest things I've ever heard was the early Tom Hanks readings of Woody, because they had him written as just a jerk, Yeah. I don't know if you
aren't those great? You should see it. There are storyboards. You can see the storyboards online. If you search "Angry Woody," Google it. It's really funny because you see these like terrified toys and this angry Woody just kind of yelling at him, and it was because they thought, okay, well, you have the first act, you want to have him be mean, and then he's going to turn around in the final act, and it was just terrible. And that was when the interesting thing in the evolution of Pixar with that was that was the screening that almost got everybody fired. And out of that screening, Steve Jobs said, he couldn't do it anymore, and Disney was gonna shut him down, and Andrew Stanton and John and Ed said, just give us 2 weeks. We're gonna try this again in 2 weeks, and if that fails, then send us all home. And I was talking to Bob Peterson about this, who directed Up and Monsters Inc. And he said Andrew Stanton went into a room with all the books, with Robert McKee and John Truby and whatever, and Save the Cat and all that stuff. He went in the room and he, who knows? I'm guessing what he took in there, but he went into the dark room, into the dark cave, his own third act, and he figured it out. He just figured out the universal theory of storytelling. Right. And when he came out, he said, "This is it. This is what we're going to do. This, and he kind of ran through it, and it was glorious. Obviously, it's a template for all Pixar movies, and that was the thing. He was just back to the wall. That's what came of it. That's why I say embrace the suck. It's gonna suck. Learn from it. Write that terrible draft. Just get it done. Because you can't learn from it if you don't do it. You're just going to think it's always wonderful in the ethereal when you're just thinking, oh, if I write a screenplay, it's going to be wonderful. I'll just sit down someday and write a perfect screenplay. It's like, no, right. You have to write 40 horrific screenplays, and then eventually, your back is to the wall. Everybody's mad at you, and then you're going to write this. You're going to figure it out. You're going to see the matrix, and this wonderful thing is going to come.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to let you go because you've been, nice enough to give me over 2 hours of amazing information here. I've really enjoyed this. Yeah, right. How long is your podcast? That's the nice thing is it's as long as I want. I mean, the longest one is 3 hours. Okay. Good. But this is definitely one of those. That's what I really love about it is that we can actually have the time to really get into stuff instead of just kind of hitting the surface. Exactly. But I love talking about this stuff, and it's my mom always told me hey, get good at something and then turn around and tell people what you did. And so I love talking about this stuff, and I'm always telling people I'm not a teacher. I'm a writer who turns around and teaches. Right. And so like I say, I've got two doors full of Post-it notes right now. I'm breaking 2 stories. I have 1 out right now. I'm starting. You're gonna have to start building some rooms onto your house. I tell you, have new doors. Yeah, maybe I'll just start buying doors and just line them up like a museum. New door, Rob? Yeah, I'm writing a story. Yeah.
Well, I figure every door has two sides, so I get two stories off of each door, and yeah, I can just kind of walk around the house. My wife hates it, but it's but it's like, okay, just don't open this door too fast. I gotta write down what's on it. Yeah. Don't turn on the fan. Oh no! Yeah, so it's all bad. But yeah. So it's a ton of fun, and hopefully people will get fun stuff out of it. I should tell you too, because people would be mad at me if I don't, that I have a website. It's robedwards.net, and and you can also find me on Facebook at Rob Edwards Workshop, where just every so often I'll see an article and I'll throw it up there, or I'll be thinking about like our conversation. I'll leave it and I'll go, hey, here's something else about antagonists,
right.
And I'll just throw it up on either the website or the Facebook page, and
okay.
And also it's a great chance for writers to meet other writers and kind of connect and share screenplays, yell at each other, Pixar style, and have fun. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate it, and thanks so much for talking to us. I'm sure all the writers there have learned a lot.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. It's been very fun.
I hope you enjoyed going inside the mind of screenwriter Rob Edwards. If you want to get links to anything we spoke about in this episode, please head over to the show notes at bulletproofscreenwriting.tv/ISM009. And if you like the show, please subscribe and leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, wherever you listen to the show. Head over to screenwritersmind.com. Thank you for listening. And as always, write, rewrite, sell, repeat. I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Inside the Screenwriter's Mind with Alex Ferrari at screenwritersmind.com. And for more great filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.